where the view looks like the view I used to see. But somehow everything has changed. Everything is gone, and yet remains. I went to the shops and the prices are going up faster than our pay. And yet I'm doing the checkout like I've been demoted as a slave. Oh, somehow everything has changed. Everything is gone, and yet remains. Went to the bank and they greeted me like I was trespassing on their land. I wanted to scream, "You're built on my toil," because my blood was getting ready to boil. But instead my soul whispered to me, oh, somehow everything has changed. Everything is gone, and yet remains. How did we get here? How did we go so wrong? It's like we were singing or trying to sing, but someone keeps changing the song. But I remember when you were there with me, and the world was a child's painting full of trees, and the days were like today, except the days were louder and the laughter longer. And I just want to go there. I just want to go there. How did we reach here, where the view looks like the view I used to see? But somehow everything has changed. Everything is gone, and yet remains.
So that image there, that's where Kelly and I camped last night next to oops, stop. Next to a train line. And because we've got Starlink and because we've got a generator, basically we're a mobile podcast unit. We can podcast from from wherever we are, which is some people are saying we're on holiday. We're not on holiday. This is how we live. This is it now. We're just roving podcasters, and that's how we try to make our living and try to do our work. So it's something new. So yeah, so it's been some interesting things. The other thing too, we're just waiting on Sue Price to get her computer working. But the other thing too, I'll just bring this up. Let's go here. we're able to bring a new view. So this is, we did this today. So Kelly dresses in op-shop clothes, and they're very elegant clothes, which is not the usual out here for people living on the road. Usually it's 3/4 length pants and a comfortable t-shirt, but it enables us to take some great photos. And then Kelly's 55 years old, and people are really, really loving these photos of her. So it's bringing something new to the outback. But basically, where we are now, if you've never got to a part of Australia where there's nothing, where the tallest thing after your car in the landscape will be you, it's worth going there just to see just the gift of the vastness that this country offers you. It's I find it quite exhilarating being out here, very spiritual. Anyway, waiting on Sue to come on, so I'm going to bring on the Bambook Company's partner in crime. Here he is, very handsome.
Oh, I wish. If only it was true. You charmer, you.
I think considering your age, you look pretty cool. You should come on the single show. We're going to have a single show soon. We'll get you laid. And so we're waiting on Sue Price. I've actually had Sue Price's number in my phone, so I must have reached out to her.
Good. Yeah. She's had a few technical difficulties, but this is the first interview in the series, which we're trying to set up for 10 a.m. The exact time's juggling around at the moment, but 10 a.m. Sunday mornings. So your only competition really is the ABC's insiders. So you're the outsider, although Sky's already stolen that. So there's some interesting people coming up. We've got Professor Ramesh Thakur coming up. He's probably Australia's most distinguished, or certainly one of the most distinguished academics in Australia, former Assistant Secretary for the General for the United Nations, and widely published all around the world. And it's been a strange, queer thing, actually, that a lot of the protesters on the ground that have evolved during this COVID era and beyond were really unaware that there was also a significant backlash in the academic realm. And I suppose that's what he represents, was that you're very unlikely to meet a more intelligent man than him. He's got a great statistical brain, and he was right. And he's an emeritus professor in Canberra at ANU. And so the government knew very, very early on that there was a very distinguished alternate view to the garbage that they were pushing, and still they pushed it. And did enormous damage to the country as a result. So he's a really fascinating.
We're talking about today as well.
We're publishing his book, The Government Your Enemy. I got that title right. And we're going to add in some of the Australian content that isn't included in that international edition and update it. So that's a great project for the Bambook Company, and we're going to interview him shortly. So he's great. You got Sue sorted, have you?
No, I'm hoping she's still not here. So I asked her to use a phone. She said, "No, I'm not using my phone." So I don't know. We just got to see. So this is Failure Family Law Reform. Now this is this is the personal signed copy, and but this is, while we're waiting for Sue to come on and talk about this. This is 600 pages long. So how long did this take you to complete?
Well, I wrote a sort of earlier version of it, just an ebook version of it in 2010. Well, it was published in 2010, and so when this 2025 was the 50th anniversary of the Family Law Act of Australia, when the most intrusive and destructive, reviled pieces of legislation ever to pass through the Australian Parliament. So it just seemed too good an opportunity not to redo the book. And I thought it would actually be fairly easy, just take the past and add in a few chapters to catch it up, but it wasn't anything like that. It was basically an entirely new project. But interesting to do. Geez, it was hard work. And Sue fits into this story because I wrote it at her lounge room. I couldn't bear just sitting here writing the thing. And so I went up there and you know, I would set the alarm for I would just get up anyway, but I'd set the alarm for midnight and then work through the night and then all through the day. And it was a million strokes in about 4 months. So it really, I had sore fingers and everything. But you can't really do those sort of projects without that concentrated effort. So it was enormously difficult, I don't mind saying, really difficult. But anyway, it's there, and it's got some nice reviews but in conservative outlets. Bettina Arndt was a great champion of the book, so and she's the only mainstream Australian journalist really that has taken up the baton for men's issues and family issues, and she's very well connected. And she's got some great stuff, for instance, on the whole domestic violence drama of whistleblowers from the police who are just fed up with the she said nature of it and the ideologically driven.
Sorry, John. No, that all I can say is usually it's just a pop-up that comes up and it says allow. Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, well, that's probably why. Yeah. Well, look. Why don't you just stay on the phone and we'll just do it by audio. Okay, we've got no other choice. So I'm just coming here. Okay, John, she's on audio. She can't figure it out. So we'll just
well, this shows that next time we do this, next week when we do this, we'll have to set all the guests up well ahead of time.
Tomorrow.
So, Sue, we're talking now with Sue Price. She's the founder of the Men's Rights Agency.
Have you got a man there in the house?
No.
Yeah, well, that's a real shame. There's let's keep going with this as such as it is. So, why did you want to bring Sue on, John, with this book? You wrote it in her place.
Well, she is, the nature of the banned book company is basically books and groups that the government doesn't want you to know about, and few people have been more marginalised or cut out of the debate than Sue Price and fathers' rights activists, and she is now one of the countries, probably the country's most outspoken and leading advocate for fathers, and that's a really significant thing. So, Sue, do you think it's fair to say that the government has waged a multi-decade war against fathers in particular? Do you think that's a fair take on it?
Absolutely, yes. They haven't stopped, and unfortunately it's getting worse. I think it's a big push from the feminists. It's causing a lot of the problem because they manipulate what's going on with the legislation. They call it feminist jurisprudence, and this is where you imagine when someone's going through a separation, the first thing they do when they go and see a solicitor is, "Oh, have you got your domestic violence order?" And she'll say, "No." "Well, sit down and we'll work that out." And they send them off to a magistrate and they get a domestic violence order. The police attend. They speak to the man, they don't do any inquiry or any investigation. They speak to the woman, then they hand in the application and they say, "Pack a bag and move out." And you can't go back until you go to court. We'll let you know when that will be. So that's how it happens. That's why we've got all these guys sleeping in the streets, sleeping under bridges, couch surfing with their friends, with nowhere to live. So that's what's happening. That's why you've got a huge level of suicide, 2,500 men a year. Many of those are due to relationship breakdown. So, we're creating an absolute monster of a relationship for our country. They're destroying relationships between men and women. I think I've always thought, well, men and women get together because they complement each other.
Yeah.
They love each other. They complement each other. I might be much stronger at some things. My husband might be much stronger at other things. And that's how you work it out. For the government to interfere then and come along and say, oh, you can't have any arguments, you can't have any discussions. The wife you can ring us up, ring the police, and the police will attend, and they'll kick the husband out of the house. That's monstrous. They're being punished before they even have an opportunity to go to court to say, I didn't do it, Your Honour. So how do you reconcile that with fairness or justice?
And what's really interesting there is I live on the road podcasting in a bus, and it's the amount of white crosses we pass on the side of these country roads, all on straight roads, all against a tree. And these ones don't get recorded as suicides. So you say 2,500, but the suicide rate, if you take in men who drink themselves to death, drug themselves to death, the suicide rate is actually far higher. I think they're curtailing the actual numbers.
Oh, I'm quite sure they are. I agree with you entirely. I usually mention the single vehicle accidents, where the man has driven his car into the biggest tree in the street.
Yeah.
And, that's another death, but it goes down as a car accident.
Yeah, that's right.
Nothing more. Look, we are creating a monster of a situation. We've got women are being told by the feminist groups, the coffee club we always refer to them as, be very afraid, watch out, this man doesn't do this, watch out, he doesn't do that. And they're terrifying these women who go home and look at their husband, and the minute he says, oh, don't do that, or don't spend all the money, or don't, do something, she's immediately on the phone to the police. And what way is that to create a good relationship? It doesn't.
No.
It just destroys the relationship. And, all these poor kids, over 1 million kids, live with one parent or the other.
Yeah.
And most often it's the mother. And, even the Americans have done research on this. I think it's about 75% of youth who are in jail, who are incarcerated, come from fatherless families.
Well, I have seen that.
Something, hasn't it?
Yeah, the other thing, there's, it's dreadful, isn't it? It's just dreadful.
Yeah. We've got all these people waffling on here about, what are we going to do about the youth crime? Bring Dad back.
Well, there's another thing. I had a play out called Marooned, which was a suicide prevention play aimed at men, and the government hated it. But the army took it up. Before COVID, the army was touring it because they reckoned everything the government used didn't work, but they believed this could work. So it's the first time they used theatre. But I was doing an interview on ABC, and before my segment, there was another woman being interviewed. She'd been commissioned by the New South Wales government to discover and record sort of basically how many women in domestic violence situations kill themselves. And what she discovered, that there was hardly any, but that the men in the ones who had been accused of domestic violence, they were killing themselves at enormous numbers and record levels. And she said the reason they were doing it was shame. The shame was the motivating. Yeah.
Most men take extreme pride in how good they believe they are as a man, as a husband, and as a lover.
Yeah.
And most of them are. So when someone that they love turns around and says, oh, you bastard, you've done so-and-so and so-and-so, and then they've called the police, that's an awful thing to do to someone.
Yeah.
Absolutely dreadful, especially if it's just false allegations tumbling out one after another.
Yeah. I'm just going to show something now. You probably can't see it, but it's on screen now. This is the West Australian newspaper, and the front headlines, it had a young boy, about 11, taking up the whole picture. Boy, yeah. How we stop this kid becoming a monster. And that is shame. That is basically saying this young boy is born broken and wrong, and we have to mold him. So we've got to take this stallion and make him into a pony that we can leave in a fairground to carry kids around.
It's absolutely dreadful. When that came out, I was horrified to see it. But they're following through with it, and they're bringing these programs into schools.
Yes, that's correct.
To teach boys how to apologise to the girls, how not to be nasty, but no one says anything about the girls. They're never told, oh, you have responsibility, you have a way to behave, or, you know, you have to apologise occasionally.
Yeah.
But that never happens. It's always the boy's fault. And you know what happens when you tell people that the expectation of their life is that they are going bad, they're going to do something bad. It'll get to a stage with them where they say, oh, what the hell, I might as well do it.
Yeah.
That's what everyone expects me to do.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, it's even, we're watching, there's a lot of attacks on these NSA boys, but I was saying, well, these boys who might be going to the extreme right wing, well, maybe they don't see any other option. They're literally being told there's something wrong with them. They're destroying the climate. There's no houses for them. Everything they think is wrong. They're toxic. So they're gravitating towards anything that gives them worth and value. And maybe being a revolutionary is one way, and, you know, but they're looking for worth.
They will. They look for the groups around the area, around their suburb, you know, because they can then regard themselves as belonging.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing coming out at the moment is that they're trying to shame young heterosexual boys who won't go on a date with a transsexual woman.
Oh, God.
And the boys are coming out going, well, it's a boy. I like women. And do you think there's also attack, not just on that, but on even heterosexuals at the same time? Like there's something wrong with a heterosexual relationship? Because, I mean, I've had a few marriages, but there's always argy-bargy and arguments. It's a roller coaster. You know, you're dealing with a man and a woman together, and it's not always scones and jam and cream. You know, there's stress, there's this, but this is how they get through it. And getting through these troubled times where they're arguing things out often makes them stronger if they're left alone to get on with it. You know?
Of course it is. And that's what people do when they discuss things, when they argue about it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
as long as they reach a solution. And that's what happens. Yeah, that's how you live your life. I know I was married for 52 years.
Wow.
We had frequent arguments, but not violent, never violent, but fairly lively arguments and discussions about what our next job was, what our next project was, or whatever it happened to be, because we're both independent people, we both have a brain, and we're both entitled to express our opinion. And that's the whole thing. You have to have respect for the other person.
And so lessons like that could be taught in schools and stuff, of how to actually have debates and discussions without losing your cool.
Yeah, exactly, and this is what they should be doing. But it's like everything they do with, like with the domestic violence. They'll send a man off to anger management programs, a way to change him, you know, to improve him. But I don't see any of these programs for women.
No.
And yet, there are plenty of women who are listed who are being violent and aggressive. They kill more children than fathers do, biological fathers. When you add mothers' boyfriends to the list, the numbers rise. They commit, according to a West Australian study, that the mothers commit 73% of the child abuse. And
wow.
then the courts always look at them and say, oh no, they'd be safe with the mother. Hey, come on. What century are they living in?
Where do you think this is all stemmed from? Where did it actually start in Australia? I know it's saying 25-year anniversary, but when did the ideology start to start pushing this? Do you know, John?
It began ideological in the mid-70s when the legislation was passed in 1975, and then the court came into existence in 1976. And the very first Chief Justice, Elizabeth Evatt, was extremely left-wing, and has never said, there is no record of her ever saying a positive thing about fathers while she advocated or was positive towards lesbian mothers, which is fine, up to you. But the court has been extremely ideological and extremely male from the get-go, and it has simply got worse. This is one thing that most people wouldn't know, and Sue can tell you all this, is what's happened with this government. So the Labor government that's just come in, the most left-wing government in Australian history, and basically run by the Democrats of Canberra, is or dictated to by them. So can you just go through the legislation that they've introduced to make the Family Law Act even worse than it already was?
Is that a question for me, John?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was last year that when they decided they were going to. It was after a push by the women. Ever since the Howard government brought in the shared parental responsibility in 2006, which gave dads an opportunity to be considered to be important to their children and to have to share in the raising of the child. The women have worked intensely on the judges and everybody else, and sort of persuaded the government to change the legislation and remove the shared parental responsibility section. So virtually they've taken fathers out, their ability to be a parent out of the equation, and then it went on that they did more things to the property settlement as well. That if there was domestic violence, if someone claimed domestic violence, they could claim a greater share of property. And of course, the numbers of children that who then didn't see their fathers has increased. So it's a really bad move for them to make that move, especially when a lot of other countries are looking at bringing in shared parenting.
Yeah.
A lot of countries recognise that this is good for the kids.
Yeah.
They don't need to lose a mum or a dad. If the two parents can get on well enough so they behave themselves in front of the children, that's what should be happening.
Yeah. Well, Kelly, my partner, she's got this idea that if the parents start to break up and they do have a property, that the property should automatically go to the children so that the children remain there. And so it's interesting, the ideas coming out from different sectors. I know when my son was about 13 or 14, someone at school said that he doesn't have to do anything I say as a father. I'm only a father by name, and I have no power over him whatsoever. And if I get angry with him or do anything else like that, they can have me removed from the house. So at 14, I stopped being a father for my son.
Yeah.
I was just a figurehead, really. I earned the money, and that was it. I remember just having been really devalued,
Yeah, well, that's coming not only from the mother, but it's also coming from the schools.
Yeah, this was not from the mother at all. This was directly from the school.
From the school, yeah. Well, that's the teachers' union again, which is interfering with a lot of these things, and they shouldn't be. They're there to teach the kids, not indoctrinate them into how to get rid of their parents out of their life, which is what's happening, of course.
Yeah.
It's just I find I'm really upset about what's going on and what the future looks like for our kids.
Yeah.
Our parents left a much better future for us when they were around, but not anymore. It's gone. And that future now is looking really bad for families, really bad for children. So, I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what they're trying to achieve. Because see, look, let's be honest. I was born in the 60s, and I remember with 3 kids. I remember growing up, and if we were getting unruly and not listening to Mum, she would go, "You wait till your dad gets home," and we'd stop. And your dad never did anything to us. I don't think he ever did anything. He walked in tight after a day. What? Yeah, whatever. Just But there was the perceived threat, and we knew it was a perceived threat. It was like and it worked, and they're still together now. They've been together over 60 years. She's got Parkinson's now. That's why I'm on the way to Perth to see her. But he cares for her. He's full of life. He could go out and do things. He's 88, but instead he's a full-time carer for her now, and he does it without any accolades from anything. And yet, a few years ago when I was with him, we went for a walk, and I remember he said to me, he's worked all his life. He's never been in jail. He's never been in any trouble. And he turned to me and said, "I'm the enemy now," meaning how society was treating him, And I thought, this is disgusting.
Exactly right, and it must be awful for the men to realise this.
Sorry, John?
It basically all stems from the universities in the 70s. So it's a tertiary created thing. So the modern day family courts, as we know them, emerged in the 1970s, empowered by feminism and the, all men are bastards wave of feminism. And then they spilled into the bureaucracies from the universities and the colleges. And they're now all in very senior positions in bureaucracies, and that's basically how the power was taken. And it's essentially Marxist. It's the family, as they always say, is the last bastion against the state, and this has been a wholesale war against the traditional family. So it's essentially Marxist in origin, morphed through the 1970s and wave after wave. Billions and billions of dollars in this country and around the world have been spent promulgating this view that men are irrelevant and they don't need to be in families. And the statistics are obvious that the safest place for a woman and children to be is with a biological father in virtually all circumstances. And even when there is dysfunction, as long as both parents, or at least one parent, is functional, then the kids tend to turn out all right. So, Sue, you're often described as right-wing or far-right, and you've had enormous problems over the years getting these views of yours of being pro-father and pro-family into the public square, endless submissions and so on and so forth. So just personally, how do you feel about being dismissed in the mainstream media as right-wing or far-right men's rights activist? Always an irony, because you're an 80-year-old woman in a wheelchair and recently bereaved. You're the leader of the far-right men's movement. I mean, it's just insane. Totally insane.
I have been cancelled so many times. It's really quite funny, because I keep dreaming up another reason, but it's far right wing, and we track women in refuges, and that's rubbish, absolute rubbish, But that was the latest one that they pulled out. That was when Peter Dutton organised for me to talk to Michaela Cash about these changes that they were bringing in last year, and three papers picked it up, and every single one was almost a response to the other. It's all about Sue Price, the director of Men's Rights Agency, the leading right-wing blah 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 that causes problems, such and such. But it's you can be cancelled, and then we used to have a very good setup with journalists and people that we talk to, but then when the word goes out, you're nobody. They won't return calls, they won't listen to you. We write hundreds and hundreds of pages of submissions and things like that. I don't think it does any good. I don't think
this was something I was going to ask you, actually, is there's so few rights of protest for any bloke that feels aggrieved by the family court, which is like basically 100% of men that go through the family court discover that it's an absolute farce, that the government doesn't have your interests at heart, and they end up as extremely disaffected. And we always maintained on Dads on the Air, which I was one of the co-founders of, that it did the country absolutely no good to have this level of and this number of disenfranchised men, disillusioned men out in the community. And one of the precursors to any revolution is a lot of French Revolution, for example, is a lot of men unemployed or underemployed who are being basically denigrated by the oligarchs or whoever's running the country. And even though they say that civil unrest is unlikely in this country, you're talking about a lot of people sleeping in their cars and sleeping in their parks who really have come to understand. I mean, COVID was a radicalising phenomenon for huge swathes of Australian, but equally the family law and the family court is an equally radicalising element, and it cuts right personally to their lives and their children. And if you take, they're biologically programmed to protect their children, and if you take them off them, these blokes wage fights through the heroic fights, often through the family court, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, which the lawyers are happy to lap up until the money runs out. It's a parasitic class, the family law practitioners, and they reap billions. You're up against a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that's one reason why your point of view is so vociferously ignored. I mean, a father's rights activist on the ABC is as rare as a climate change skeptic. I mean, they just do not enter.
That's right.
It's true.
As an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah, exactly right. But these were really strongly built by decisions, you know.
Yeah, so as an anti-vaxxing men's rights person, I literally, ABC doesn't know I exist. I used to be the favorite of them. They used to have me on all the time in the plays.
Oh, really?
But I remember I was at the MTC, just to show you how it is, I was at the MTC with a play in one of those smaller theatres, and there was a men's rights, Sydney, a good woman, young woman called Sydney, who was a men's rights activist. I can't remember her second name. She came down to do a speech, and I went to this speech. And the MTC found out, and they said that the guy who came and said, look, if they know you're here, you'll never have another play on. That's it. You literally play ball or vanish. And it's like, what do you want from your artists? You know what I mean? It's now a job to rock the boat and stuff, but it's this really strange community now. And this was happening 10 years before COVID. It just seems, I don't understand it. They're under the guise of safety and all this, they're just taking away all our freedoms, all our rights, even our rights just to be ourselves as a human being. It seems to be taken away.
Sue and I went to
Sorry, say that again, Sue.
I'm saying we're following in the path of the UK.
Yeah, that's right.
United Kingdom. Yeah, because it's really bad there, really, really bad. And they brought in all these ID things, and fancy having an ID card. And if they don't like what you're saying, they can actually stop you having access to your bank account.
Yeah, it's 12,000, over 12,000 British people were in jail last year for Facebook posts.
Yeah.
12,000.
Yeah. That's it. That's appalling.
Sorry.
They're probably trying to bring that in here. I'm sure they are.
They absolutely are. Yeah. What were you going to say, John?
Gosh, I'm not sure, but I think this is an appropriate point to go back to Sue. How did it all start? So, how was the Men's Rights Agency established in the You've been there for how long? 30-something years.
We had a business, myself and my husband, putting tyres on cars. And, we employed quite a few guys, of course, and unfortunately I did the pays, and unfortunately I used to have to take out the child support each week, so that they lost a substantial amount of money that went back to the government to be fed off to the mother of the children, and then they came to ask me about what help could they get, what can we do. And I didn't have a clue at this stage, but I started to have a look at it, and I found there were 37 women's organisations, every single one of them funding. And when we retired out of that business, we were sitting around here looking, what are we going to do now? Hey, well, let's do something with this and see if we can help. And that's how it started. We approached a few solicitors and got them on board to give some free time to reduce their rates a bit. And then, that was how it started. That was 32 years ago. So
wow.
It's still going.
Reg, your husband, deserves a bit of recognition here, because he was often manning the phones as well, and he was a real sweetheart to talk to.
He did more than his fair share. Answer the phone, talk to the guys, and we were kept pretty busy, and we used to run a meeting every month, and some things, and we tried some protests, but they weren't terribly successful, because it is really hard to get the guys to actually do something, unfortunately.
What do you think that's to do with?
A certain amount of apathy, a certain amount of it's not going to do any good idea. They don't see any point because nobody's listening to them, nobody's doing anything.
Yeah.
And we've certainly found that. You know, you sort of think, is it worth another battle? Oh, I think yes.
These blokes are battered and shattered by the time they get to you.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, and they're broke. They're devastated. They haven't seen their children for 12 months, 2 years, some even longer.
I'm meeting loads of guys like that for the last 5 years, interviewing people on the road. I mean, I often have mothers coming up, like mothers of the grown sons, going, "My son hasn't seen his kids in, forever."
Yeah, I've got a lot of mums on our list who ring first and talk to me about their sons, and I try to help them and tell them, it's really important for them to be there for them. I try to encourage them to, keep going, try to see their children, go to try mediation if they think it'll work. And a lot of them haven't got anything to be able to do anything with. They've got no money left.
Yeah.
They've got no property left. They've got nowhere to live, a lot of them. So how do you start life again?
Yeah. I mean, we all have horror stories. I remember one of my friends, he was trying to stay in his house. They didn't have enough money to separate, and he was trying to stay in his house and just be with his kids. But she called the cops and claimed that he'd abused her, and he knew nothing about it. He dropped his kids off to school, came home, he used to work from home, went to the office, and then the cops turned up and said, "You've got half an hour to pack up your stuff, and then you've got to get out of the house." And he wasn't allowed to see the kids until the court case in any way, not allowed to text them. He just vanished from their lives as though he vanished. And if he'd contacted him, he'd go to jail. And what happened because of COVID, that 3 months until the court case became 6 months, became a year, and they just kept extending it, and all the time not allowed one single contact with his kids. And to me, that's torturous. I mean,
of course it's torturous, and what's it do to the children as well?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Suddenly they've lost their dad, and most kids love their dads.
Yeah.
It's just so cruel what they're doing and the way they're treating people. I think the government needs to step out in families. I think and of course the other part that we have problems with is the child safety departments. We haven't even mentioned them.
Yeah.
But they're monsters, absolutely.
Yeah, they are. I've heard that. There's one here, Brother Todd, is saying, comment, because we're live at the moment. My brother hasn't seen his children in over 10 years. It's destroyed him.
Oh.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, when I'm just using my friend as an example, he didn't want to go to lawyers. He was happy to give her whatever she wanted. But no, went to the lawyers, and he lost everything. They just consumed all his wealth, So the last time I saw him, he was renting a cheap house, and he was just miserable. He couldn't get past it. He was called stuck in story. I think he'd just been brutalized, and he just didn't have the strength, the emotional strength to go on and start again, because he's still with us. We were very concerned for ages. Remember, we're calling him, a group of us guys were calling him during COVID, just to make sure he didn't top himself. Yeah. Because we knew he was there, And there was no help for him.
That's what the men need to rely on, their close friends, to be able to keep them going. Because there's no help out there. It's all, if you go to one of the men's organisations, one of the funded ones, it's all about changing men. They've got to change. They've got to be, go through anger management, do all this sort of thing. And that of course, when you've got a man who's actually been a victim of domestic violence, that's one of the worst things you can do to them.
Yeah.
It's like blaming the victim.
Yeah.
And that's, it's outrageous that nobody will listen and nobody will provide any assistance. There's no anger management for women, and there should be. That's desperately needed. There's no help for men if they're thrown out of the house. There's no way there are very limited places, Salvation Army and those type of places who have limited accommodation. But that's about it. There's nothing. Absolutely nothing for them.
It's a very human story, and it's amazing that the Australian government, that these people that are paying taxes are paying taxes to have this sort of travesty foisted on them. assets stripped by money-hungry lawyers, lied about in across multiple platforms. The damage is unbelievable. We were talking just before you came on, Sue, that I wrote this book at your lounge room table. And one of the things that struck me just sitting there writing the damn thing, God, it was hard work, was the number of people that keep calling you and the tragedy of the stories that they were telling. Can you still hear me all right? Is the sound all right? Oh, good. So so I just thought I wrote as a postscript to the book. Sorry, am I talking or you're talking?
You keep talking, John.
All righty. The Men's Rights Agency is essentially in retirement. It maintains a website but doesn't advertise or promote itself. Nonetheless, the phone rings constantly. Confused, damaged and heartbroken fathers, bewildered by the ferocity of the court and child protection systems stigmatising them, ring up scandalised by the way they have been treated. She takes these calls, mostly men, but also women, friends, mothers, sisters, concerned about the welfare of a male in their lives and equally outraged by their mistreatment. While the government is spending upwards of $60 billion on the national disability insurance and billions of dollars on women's advocacy groups, no money or virtually no money goes to addressing these men's concerns. Sue is unpaid, not a shred of public money comes her way, yet community groups, some of them government funded, send clients her way. She listens to them, quite likely the first time they've even had a sympathetic, assures them that they are not alone and assures them that the treatment they have endured is by no means unusual. She tries to put steel into their shattered spines and offers some common sense advice. And I'm just going to give a brief sampling of those stories before I ask you about that whole experience of the people ringing. Here's just a sampling of those stories that I overheard while I was sitting there. God, that was hard work. One Queensland farmer whose wife decided she wanted to become a professional and live in town. He paid for her university degree. She pressured him to sell the farm for the property settlement. Unfortunately, the young adult son who saw his future disappear took a gun and shot himself in the head. He lost his farm. He lost his son. The father was destroyed. He rang for advice on how to find a solicitor after the woman continued to push for the property development. Another young man with a 3-year-old toddler. The mother didn't want him to have any contact at all. He took it to court. He was successful. The mother was denied contact and had to hand the child over to dad. The day before she was due to hand over the child, she gassed herself and the child. So instead of the child arriving on Sunday morning, oh, they're sad, these stories, God. So instead of the child arriving on Sunday morning, the police were standing on the doorstep telling him he had lost his son. He arranged a funeral for his son, and the mother's family decided they were going to continue to sue him for the property development. And then settlement, it should be, and then they would drop the lawsuit.
That was on the basis of the little boy being.
You there? Sue? We seem to have lost her. Yeah, keep going.
This is the state of art telecommunications in Australia. All right, I will just keep reading this until they get back. So they're incredibly sad, a lot of these stories. A young man with a 3-year-old toddler. The mother didn't want him to have any contact at all. He took it into court. Oh, we just did that one, sorry. And they said they would stop the lawsuit if he exhumed the body and interned it with the mother. In another case, the father was trying to get every service to act. The mother was off with some new boyfriend. They finally found her with a boyfriend. The boy was in a box with cigarette burns all over him. He went back down south. That was a horrific story.
Hello?
Hi. Yep.
Hello?
Yeah, hi. We're still here. John's just reading out. I just called you back. We seem to have lost you for a bit. Yeah.
All right. I'll just add in one.
Isn't the other thing true, though, John, that wasn't it Julia Gillard who brought out that a woman can lie, but she won't face any contempt charges, even if it's found out she lied, if she says the father's abusing the kids or something like that?
That was in 2000. or around there, I went to a Senate hearing on domestic violence, and I'd been pushing all the way through for perjury charges, for people to be punished for making false allegations. And the woman sitting next to me, who I believe was the representative to the Attorney General, she looked at me and she said, "Oh, Sue, I don't think we're ever going to do that with women."
Wow.
So, yes,
Wow.
I know. That was my wow. How can you say that?
Yeah, I know. We have a Borrow. I'm struggling with that second name. You want to crack at that second name, John? Kaisarovic?
Yeah,
Kaisarovic? I'm one of these statistics, and it really sucks. I'm really sorry, Borrow. I'm not making fun of your second name, but Borrow's a regular commentator, and this is it. Is all these men now? The other question I have is, even though these have come through and driven by feminists, they've managed to do it when men are in charge in the parliaments. It's mainly men, and yet they've still managed to get all these laws through. So how come the men in politics have betrayed their own brothers and sisters by doing this?
I think because they value the love of the woman rather than the brotherhood of the man next to them. Unfortunately, they go home and they say to their wife, "Oh, wasn't I good today? We gave them another $8.5 billion, to do their next 10 years' work."
Yeah.
And he goes home and tells the wife that and expects to have, "Oh, aren't you wonderful?"
Yeah.
And everything's laid out for him. And I think that's how that works, It's men, again, wanting to please the woman that they're with and wanting to be seen as being kind, generous, anything else,
Yeah.
That's part of. We need people to start waking up. We need people to start listening to the statistics. If only we could find satisfactory methods to get those statistics out. But the trouble is, we have, anyone who applies for a grant now, if it's a woman, they can get grants for particularly restricted type of research, and that research, of course, is going to bring up figures that are going to show, domestic violence is out of control, men are killing more people, men are doing this, men are doing that. Instead, we can't get funding to do balanced research that will show the true figures.
Yeah.
Everything else that comes out it's all tainted, unfortunately.
All skewed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, can we talk about this book though here? Oh, sorry. Can we talk about this book, Failure of Family Law Reform Australia?
Oh, that's fantastic.
We've got it in the Banned Book Company now, and now it's 600 pages long. Isn't that true, John? This is a huge book.
Yeah, huge. It's a huge amount of work. And signs of all this, I'll just give one or two more little sort of examples because they're so vivid. Another, Sue recalls, had his twin boys on a holiday. They were so unhappy. They didn't want to go back to mum. They were about 12 years old. He walked into the workshop, saw one of the boys hanging from a beam. If Dad hadn't walked in at that specific moment, the kid would have died. One father writes that it doesn't matter how much evidence he provides about his partner's violent conduct, a simple lie from her, for which I have factual evidence proving it wrong, is believed. And on it goes. Cheating, lying, manipulating, and gaslighting. The family court is not called the palace of lies for no reason. And signs that there were these enormous problems with the jurisdiction, literally one of the most hated jurisdictions in the country, and we haven't even got to child support agency. There's been problems with this right from the beginning. So if you could talk a bit about that, Sue, the really early days of this legislation, which was brought in with, great optimism that we were going to go. It was a great progressive thing. It was only passed by one vote, but it was a great moment of liberation for women and for men as well, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So can you talk about the early days of it?
It was based on, I can't recall the name of a couple of politicians who are fairly high up, were focused on trying to bring in a shared parenting type system. But of course, by the time it got to the bureaucrats and it got to the legislators, it changed totally. That it became a system of getting one parent out, making sure that the mother could afford the house, what may, and made sure that she would get child support, etc., single parents, pensions, and all the rest of it. And that's how it developed. And it's been for a long time. It's been the attitude is women don't lie, children don't lie, and it's always the man who's the problem. That's just been. I can't describe how this has happened apart from it has been constant barrage of information being fed to journalists, to media, to anyone who will listen about how bad men are supposed to be and how unhappy children are, but they never ever look at what happens with women. Like even today, if you see that a woman has killed some children, 3 or 4, I think was the last one. She drove the car into a truck, and it didn't think anything. It was on about page 4 or 5,
Yeah.
But if a man does something similar, it's front page for days.
Oh, we had that with the guy. Remember the guy drove his kids into the dam, and he was just a monster. And then months later, an African migrant woman did the same with her 3 kids, exactly the same. And she was seen as a victim of domestic abuse. They had all these reasons for why she did it, the poor thing. Totally.
It was the one here up in Cairns who killed 7 children, I think it was. And she's been just shipped off to a mental health place. Oh, poor woman, she was mentally ill. No punishment. But if it had been a man, he'd have been front page news all the way through. But you just can't follow the stories because they don't publish them.
Yeah, there's a lot of people on here saying in the comments the plan is to destroy the family unit.
Correct.
What are your thoughts?
Quite sure, but because with 2 of you, you are much stronger than just one of you fighting on your own.
Yeah.
And that's what the government wants. They want everyone to be individuals who can't stand up to the government, but if you had 2 of you standing up, you've got a chance. That's what it's all about. Or at least that's what I think it's all about. But it's you've got the feminist dogma that comes into it, that they are after supremacy. They think they're supreme. They think they can do it so much better. They sort of quote about, wars and things like that won't happen with women in charge. But you look at the wars in the 18th century and so on.
Margaret Thatcher went to war. Margaret Thatcher went to war straight away with the Falkland Islands.
Yeah, well, she didn't think about all the young kids who are going to lose their life, and you all the others, the Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Victoria, all they had no hesitation in going to war.
Yeah.
So where do we get this idea that women are going to be so much more gentle and more controlled? Because it doesn't work. It doesn't gel. But that's where you've got a lot of problems coming from is from the feminist departments, because they really do regard themselves as being superior.
It's also an instinctive expansion by the bureaucracy of its own remit, so that the more people you have reliant on the state to survive, with single mothers' pensions and all the rest of it, the better. The last thing that they instinctively want is a happy, preposterous and self-supporting family unit. And it's bizarre that a country would destroy itself in this manner. And part of it is, it's the weapon of choice to domestic violence. And it's one of the great canards of this whole debate is that women don't lie about such serious matters, which, of course, anyone who's been anywhere near this jurisdiction or even had the most cursory look at it knows that the blizzard of lies and the adversarial nature of it encourage distortion and encourage lies. So, and there's no consequence for lying. So, none whatsoever. So, it's ridiculous.
In fact, there was a survey done last year, I think it was, by the Coalition to End Domestic Violence. It's an international group. Got a huge number of members now across most countries. But they did a survey into the false allegations business, and they found that Argentina had 11% were false allegations, 3.4 million. Australia, 13%, 3.5 million persons falsely accused.
Wow.
And the United Kingdom was only 4%, and the United States was 8%. So we hit the top of the list.
Wow. Wow.
For
And these are
false
all
allegations. Yeah, great.
Behind every these statistics, there's destroyed families, there's kids without fathers, there's broken men, and there's also women that at one point would be going, how did I gain from this? My kids are destroyed.
Yeah,
why
have I lost my husband?
Yeah, why have I lost?
Because I listened to these silly women down the coffee cup.
Yeah. Because I think too, the other thing is that relationships are hard. You got to work at them. It's not all plain sailing.
They're not easy.
No.
They're not easy, and if they appear to be too easy, you're not discussing things.
Yeah.
You're not settling issues.
Yeah.
And that's what people need to understand. You can have a reasonable conversation without punching one in the nose. It doesn't need to happen.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. It's just talk about it. Get over it. Like if the police are called out to a domestic violence order, they should be taking a card for a counsellor, handing that out. If there's no obvious signs of abuse or physical attack or anything like that, give them a card for a counsellor and say, I'll suggest you go and see that person.
And would you say too that something that becomes violent doesn't usually begin nowhere? It's not like I think Bill Burr puts it best when he says it's not like the woman said, pass me the tissues, and he starts punching on. Basically, by that point, they've argued to this point. I know there's cases where the guy's just an asshole, but in the majority of cases, would you say that they've both been working up to this point and there's an explosion where the real cure is to not get to that point in the first place? And
exactly right, yeah.
And find other ways around it.
A lot of
my take on this
mutually caused, and that's one part that they don't like to admit. They don't want that information out, but it is. If only people could realise that if they just sit down, calm down, talk to each other, and say, well, what do you think we can do about it? How can we solve it? We've got a problem. We're disagreeing. We must find a solution to it. That's all you need to do.
No. You were going to say something, John?
I was just going to read a couple more paragraphs from this book about all these messy cases, and it just concludes that section. All the cases are messy, and in every last case, the authorities have made the situation worse. It's a ceaseless tide, this Marxist-inspired carnage, this destruction of the so-called patriarchy, that is men, fathers, lovers, brothers and sons. Anyone who thinks the system is working for the betterment of the society as a whole needs their head read. Apologists for this level of bastardry and dysfunction are all government funded to the tune of billions of dollars annually. They should all have their funding cut. Then you might see a bit of reality and human decency creeping back into the system. You wouldn't find a single one of the public servants who have helped perpetuate this fiasco taking calls at all hours, such as Sue does, listening to the human side of the carnage they have propagated, the damage and heartbreak they have inflicted on so many individuals and on Australia as a whole. There you go.
Ryan, can I ask, just to wrap this up for this morning, what solutions do you see going forward? What solutions would you see implemented that can maybe take us in a different direction, a healthier direction?
Number one, we need to stop the nonsense that goes on with the domestic violence legislation, and the billions of dollars that's put into that for the women to create their story of what they're trying to do. I think last year something like $8.4 billion Albanese gave them, for a 10-year program. That's an enormous amount. But that's where a lot of it's coming from. So if you can get if you can get their influence out of it, and I'm sure women will be will be safer if that happens. And then people, what happened to marriage counselling? Do we ever have that? Do we ever see it?
No.
I don't hear of anyone going to that before they actually decide to tie the knot.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to push to do that more.
So that happens before people get married.
Yeah.
To sort of demystify the myth of it, like, oh, it's all going to be happy sailing, but actually sit a young couple down and go, look, this is reality. How are you going to deal with this?
Is what how are you going to work it out?
Proactive.
What do you expect out of a marriage?
Yeah.
That needs to happen, and it doesn't, because most of the counsellors have sort of changed their system, and they're either working for the family court or sort of working for the domestic violence services. That's the problem. We've become so focused on this domestic violence, it's ridiculous. So that needs to go. The way they're treating it. I'm not saying, we know that people get violent with each other, both men and women, and that needs to be dealt with, obviously. But we have legislation, criminal legislation, which can deal with that. Not putting it into a package of this is only civil. And, you can put your hand up and you can say you'll accept an order, but without admission, and it won't affect you. It does affect you, because it'll follow you for the rest of your days going through family court or any association with your children. Because you put your hand up and said, I'll accept an order. So, it's one of the biggest problems that we have, because it's guiding everything that goes on from once an order is made. So, we're trying to do something about that. We're trying to get up a court case about it to challenge it, and we'll see how we go. It's looking good.
Okay, go ahead, John.
I personally think the system is beyond reform, that there's no way at all that you can now reform the family court. It's ignored legislative attempts to reform it, such as in the mid-90s under Paul Keating, of all people, who passed legislation, which was actually quite good legislation, saying that the default position for any separating couple, same as in Sweden, is shared care, and that you have to have a very good reason to deviate from that. And basically, you guys work out the details. Shared care is the norm. And in fact, the number of shared parenting cases in the family court then went down, not up. So it's defied the will of Parliament. It's ignored the protests of the population, and has been enormously destructive. And here we are, still funding it, still talking about it. No father is going to get fair treatment in the family court. It's an asset stripping operation by lawyers. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and good luck surviving. Just don't hang yourself in the back shed, but all too many do. And it's just a disgrace. And the government knows from research perfectly well that the highest rates of suicide are in the separated age group amongst men. They know that this is a significant factor in driving male suicide, but no culpability, no blood on their hands, no, we can't do anything. It's beyond disgraceful. The same is true of the Child Support Agency, which operates on the same dishonest principle that anything a man says is the voice of a patriarchal abuse. Anything a woman says is the noble oppressed, the noble victim. It's beyond repair. I seriously think it is way beyond repair.
It's interesting here. We've got a comment from Texas. G'day, Radiance. Hello from Texas, USA. You all good Australians are not alone. We Americans society suffer the same fate. It's planned and orchestrated by satanic Marxism to take down the Western countries. It's hard to. We have things like that stating all the time, and the evidence is there. I don't see how our society is benefiting by this. The only beneficiary seems to be whoever wants to destroy the family unit in Australia. That's it. I mean, men are terrified. I remember one of my last jobs before I started to make a living as a playwright. I worked as a tram driver, and a third of the tram drivers were single, and they did not want to be in a relationship. Not that they didn't want to get into a relationship, that was fine, they were just terrified of getting out of it. They didn't want to lose their stuff. They were just terrified. It was safer to be bachelors, and these were hardworking, good-looking, decent guys, and they didn't even sleep around. They just had nothing to do with women because they were so scared of them. So how do women benefit from that?
They don't. Unfortunately, that's why they're all screaming. Where are all the good men?
Yeah.
Where are the men that were prepared to commit? Because they're no longer there.
Yeah.
I was just
safer to get committed.
Yeah. John's book. I picked up some commentary about the book, and the last section was section 6, which was call for radical reform. And it says the book is not just a critique, it serves as a call to action. Stapleton proposes practical reforms, abolishing the current adversarial lawyer-managed family courts, establishing a non-adversarial, non-lawyer-led institution, increasing accountability and transparency, ending ideological biases, and a cultural shift to value fatherhood and shared parenting. It emphasizes evidence-based, child-focused change. And that's probably pretty true of what it does say. Okay? That's the book I think every father, every person in Australia, every mother as well, should be reading.
So we've got the link here. Failure Family Law Reform Call, personally signed. Get a personally signed copy by John Stapleton. There's another one. You probably go to Amazon and get one that's not signed. But if you want a personally signed copy, then go to the BAM Book Company. It's there, and you'll find the link there. So if you can't click on this link, just go to cafedoctor.com and hit the BAM Book Company. This is the latest book in there. Failure Family Law Reform Australia. Sue, thanks for coming on and gritting your way through it, where you didn't have to show your face, you're just on the phone. And
I'll see if I can work it out for next time.
This is the joy. This is the joy of. What would you say? The joy of live podcasting. And John, is anything either of you would like to say before we wrap it up? And I commend you on your work, both of you. This is really important stuff.
Hang on.
I think it's marvelous what you're doing, Michael. I would love to be doing something like you are.
Thank you.
I love traveling and I love talking to people, but I think it's a wonderful idea. And you're obviously making some great inroads.
Well, we're basically a mobile. See, I don't have to live. The rents are so expensive. Why should I just live in some crappy rental in the city, paying a fortune for power and everything, when I can live in a bus and Australia's my home? And I can do these podcasts. I mean, if you saw where we are now, we're in the desert. We're the highest thing we are the highest. The bus, nothing's taller than the bus in the entire horizon, whichever way you look. There's so much freedom out here. This country is literally built for brave, free-thinking human beings, and for some reason, they're cattling us into these hive mentality sort of little 15-minute cities. It's bonkers. You know what I mean?
All right.
Yeah. And John, yourself, anything you'd like to say before we...
All right, yes. Successive governments from both left and right have failed to listen to their constituents and respond to their concerns. They have resorted to vested inquiries in the hands of mandarins and publicly funded elites whose feigned attempts to listen to the views of ordinary people are a stain on the Australian public service. In terms of human suffering, the Australian public has already paid dearly for the failure to reform outdated, badly administered and inappropriate institutions dealing with family breakdown. The country's failure to reform family law and child support is ultimately a failure of democracy itself.
Beautifully put.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you look at the front of the book where John has listed all the reports and all the inquiries that have been held into the family court and family law act, you wouldn't believe how many there are, and we're still scratching our heads as to what to do about it.
Wow,
it's crazy.
Amazing. We're going out with a song we've written, Cafe Latte, called Silent Man, and so have a look, John. This is an ad we've been putting out, but it suits this. Sue, thanks so much for coming on, and hopefully we'll get you on next time with a working computer. Yeah, I'd like to follow up because I'm I send you a piece I wrote the other day called 3 Boys on a Roof, where I watched 3 innocent boys on a roof at DY. And to me, it breaks my heart of what's ahead of them. You know what I mean? And
the future is looking very raw.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's something to fight for. And the crosses out here, John, anyone who travels Australia, the crosses are just everywhere. And when you stop and look at them, they're nearly always men.
Yeah.
The same ones that go off to fight in wars.
Yeah, it is something worth fighting for. Okay, guys, so this is just a short of the thing, Silent Man. I'll send these things through to you, Sue. If you can just text me an email to here, I'll text you some things through. Maybe you can use them. John, I'll see you next week with who we got on next week?
See you next Sunday. Well, the schedule is in flux because of news things, but one of the we've got Colin Lilly coming on, who's Jacinta Price's husband, so that'll be great.
It's going to be huge, man.
Out about Australia, and he's a musician, as you know. So and hopefully, well, in my view, I think Jacinta Price would be a great prime minister, and he would. I agree. Make a very beautiful first man. Who knows? Because he looks like a leprechaun, basically, with a long beard, very different to her.
I've seen him. Yeah. Okay, guys, this is it. I'm going to get on the play this. Right. I'm going to get on the road and head off.
See you next Sunday.
See you, guys. Take care. See you tonight.
Try and keep your job now. Somehow you have to learn to be. Just another silent man. This land is changing, this is a fast changing land. Yeah, I get it, okay. I read the memo, I understand. You wanna say something now, in fact you just wanna scream. But you know that you can't, for if you wanna survive, then mate, you're gonna have to find the courage to be just another silent man. Little white crosses passing by, wilted flowers drying around their base. Life's been reached again, I guess, by another